And then we're also going to look at income generation. Inside the options playbook, I actually coined the phrase fig leaf, which means that it's a leverage covered call. But the strategy, if you go to my book, which is optionsplaybook.com, and you put in the search tab, you put in fig leaf, it will say that this is an alternative to doing a covered call where you own 100 shares of stock, but the tagline is that you're kind of covered in that if the stock gets taken away and you own the stock, well, that's simple. You can just let it get taken away. You can be asleep while that happens. It's not that big of a deal. But there's a little bit more management that goes along with doing this portfolio where you own the option, you own the right to buy the stock as opposed to owning the stock. So we want to manage those positions a little bit closer. And because of that, we're going to give up some premium. We're not going to sell a nearer term option contract and try to get an exact dollar amount, right? If we're targeting options on this portfolio, we're going to go about 30 days in time. Remember, we got a 6-month option contract. So if everything went perfectly, every 30 days we would sell a new option contract. And we look for a delta that's close to 10. Now, delta is also probability. So you can say that there's about if you ride it all the way to 30 days, there's a 10% chance that that option contract would be at least 1 cent in the money, meaning that you would be assigned. So there's some reason behind that. And the fact that we go out 30 days, so we still get something for it. The time premium, there's still something worth selling, even though it's not a 20 delta or a 25 delta. It's not a higher premium thing because we aren't paying as much as we would have if we bought the stock outright. We're paying quite a bit less, and we don't want to be assigned. And it's that simple. We're not doing this to try to get rid of it. We're trying to balance the time premium that's in the deep in the money call option and generate some income by selling calls against it. Now, the decision to sell covered calls depends on the underlying stock performance, how bullish we are, how volatile the underlying is, and we're going to look at timing. Here's the last bullet here on my slide is such as whether the company is going to announce earnings or any other event that could affect the stock price movement. So in earnings season, we don't want to be assigned. We don't want to be blindsided. So we'd be less apt to sell a call around a known event as opposed to doing it after the earnings season is done. So we'll be paying attention to when the earnings for the company is going to be announced. Now, I mentioned stock and I mentioned volatility. For example, I'm going to pass the torch over to Tony here shortly, and he's going to talk a little bit about research, but I'm going to give you an example of a portfolio that I went through that I've already used or that I've already done. Well, I should say managed would be a better word. And one of the stocks that I had in it was Caterpillar, and the other stock is NVIDIA. So you think of those two stocks, Caterpillar had a bullish forecast on it. The stock had done very well in that time frame that I was managing that deep in the money call option. But I sold calls almost every month against that position. NVIDIA, I did not. I didn't want to manage it. I didn't want to be blindsided. There was too much news. There were too many gap openings. And so I just rode NVIDIA on the way up. And we're going to go through the example of when that happened. These are real numbers that I'm going to share with you today. And on the Caterpillar position, we sold covered calls to try to cover some of that premium. So that's the type of concept that's behind it. Even though there's going to be structure to the portfolio that we're putting together, we're also going to have considerations when we want to sell calls versus not selling calls. But if we do, this is going to be the format of the calls that we're going to be looking to sell.